are totally live. How about that? Hey, I can figure this stuff out. I've been a computer consultant for 40 fucking years, and I can figure out how to use StreamYard sometimes.
You're a professional, Mike.
Yeah, I'm a professional, man. Yeah, all the time. Anyway, so the reason for this hullabaloo is Professor Dave and somebody called Subboor Ahmad did a debate on James Fodor's channel. And then they, both Professor Dave and Subboor, posted it on their channels, and I included links for all three because I like to be fair. And let's see what else. It's an interesting discussion about Dennis Noble and his bullshit and his clown show is what I call it. And we'll get into that a little bit, but Subboor is also going to do a live discussion. In fact, he's supposed to be doing it now on junk DNA. Oh no, he changed it to 3 hours from now. He's going to do one on junk DNA with Dr. Sternberg from the Creationist Evolution News or whatever that goddamn thing is. So anyway,
yeah,
that's happening. But
propaganda rag.
Yeah. So should we play this part first, or should we go to where he does his little blurb at the beginning first, so we can see where he's coming from?
However you want to do it, Mike. You're better planned for this than I am. I just have some off the cuff remarks.
Me? Plan? What the fuck? I figured out that I'm going to start putting PhD after my name because I am a PhD. I am presently a high school dropout.
There you go. That's not misleading at all.
No, that's not misleading at all. I can claim to be a PhD. Okay, yeah, we'll go back to the beginning and kind of get an idea where he's coming from. And I kind of started in the middle here because most of what he says. Oh, okay, so he really likes Dennis Noble, as most creationists and intelligent design people do. Dennis Noble believes solidly in evolution, natural selection, and mutation through natural selection. But Dennis Noble, he got old and he started taking money from the Templeton Foundation.
Oh, no.
And he's kind of playing into creationist hands.
Oh.
And he's doing what a lot of these people do. I want to read something I wrote about it, and I think it will make sense, but we'll listen to what he says first of all. We'll get started. Anyway, plan. We don't need no stinking plan.
Of neo-Darwinism, according to Dennis Noble, and all four of these pillars, according to him, have fallen. The first one is the central dogma, which is DNA to RNA to proteins. There's only one way causation of information. Now, according to him, that's not true. Although the dogma holds in that direction, it is not the only way that information is conveyed. The second pillar is the Weismann barrier. This is the idea that the genome is isolated from the soma cells. The third is the passive vehicle, that the organism is a passive vehicle to retain genes which are active causally in the process of evolution. The last pillar is the pillar of randomness. So what Dennis Noble is challenging is the idea that randomness can actually generate function. He doesn't deny randomness. This is a common straw man that's made.
Did you just pop in on two different things? What is happening, Austin? Oh. So Austin, you're still hooked up on the other one, but you're not. Oh, let me see here. Okay. So you came back in? Can I hear you? Oh, let's see. No, remove. I can't hear it. Austin? Okay, so now you're only on one, but I can't hear you. So I think you're freezing. Yeah, clone for a while. It was kind of scared me, I don't like that clone shit. Bad enough. Ooh, alarm set. Oh, present. Okay, now I'll put you back again.
I'm sorry, having the technical difficulties. Great way to start things.
Okay, so I'm going to remove. Well, okay, you removed it. Okay, now we can go. Okay.
Yes.
So, yeah, now we're on randomness. So, anyway.
Against him. However, what he's challenging is the idea that randomness in of itself can generate biological functionality.
Right. Blah, blah, blah.
Now, before I get...
Okay, so now he goes on about Dave Farina and how Dave Farina got the dates wrong on when shit started up. I got a nice little historical thing on it. And, but then...
into the argument, there's some...
Well, jockey ahead to that little piece that you found where he sort of admits where he concedes and he doesn't realize he's conceding, that sort of thing.
Now, there's something really interesting that he does. He doesn't give us the present that we were talking about. He doesn't give us the present about why is Dennis Noble a clown? Why is Dennis Noble
I'll tell you
wrong?
why.
He doesn't give us any of those presents. What he does do is he gives us 3 fallacies. So thank you for that, Farina. Like a good student, you were listening to my talks, but you misrepresented me in many different places. However, I want to concentrate on 3 particular fallacies. The first is the equivocation fallacy. The equivocation fallacy, let me just give you an example. There's somebody falling down on the floor saying, I have a heart attack. Can you call a doctor? And then someone comes and says, yes, I'm a doctor, but they have a PhD in gender studies. That is the fallacy of equivocation. The word doctor is being used in 2 different ways. So that is highly misleading. You said Darwinian evolution is a fact, and you defined it as what? You defined it as random mutations and natural selection. Well, guess what? That Darwinian evolution is accepted by me. That Darwinian evolution is accepted by Dennis Noble. That Darwinian evolution is accepted by everyone, and it's trivial. Remember, there's 2 different ways that you're using the word Darwinian evolution. When I referred to Darwinian evolution, I referred to the idea that random mutations plus natural selection can generate mind and body. That's the definition of Darwinism that I'm using. That's the definition of...
So what yeah, this is the crux of the debate, right?
Yeah. So he basically he set up a debate called "Is Darwinian evolution a fact?" And then he just said, "Yeah, Darwinian evolution is a fact, but I use a different definition of it." So neener, haha.
Yeah, it's like so
nobody is using your definition, Subboor, except for you.
It's called the Subboor. Yeah.
And Dave asks him several times to clarify this definition, and he dodge, duck, dip, dives and dodges around answering what the hell he means by this obscure, esoteric definition that exists only in his mind that nobody in the field is using. It's so bizarre.
Subboorian evolution. Subboorian evolution. So he wanted to bring in the mind and body of the human being, right? Which he never actually addresses anywhere in the goddamn debate. He never spent. That would get him into like dualism and physicalism and all this bullshit. And that was not the debate that Professor Dave signed up for, and he just keeps, Yeah, and the other thing Professor Dave does, it's kind of funny because you can tell Dave doesn't like this guy. He says, tell me about the science. Tell me about the mechanism. What are you talking about? With all this bullshit, what are you talking about? And it just goes on and on. The interesting thing is now I linked a whole bunch of stuff in the description for anybody that really wants to get into this. But Noble and what is his name? Who's the other guy? I almost said a bad name. I almost said Sheldrake. Fuck, never want to talk about that guy. But let's see, what's his name? Oh, who's the other guy that's with Noble? Shapiro. Shapiro and all these guys are doing, and Philip Ball, all these guys are doing really great work in an extended synthesis of evolution, right? But the thing is that when they talk about the extended synthesis or or the third way or whatever, they talk about it as if it totally crumbled the old synthesis.
Yeah.
And Professor Dave shows very clearly with a Venn diagram somewhere here. Unfortunately, I did not bookmark that part. What is really going on? And what's going on is a lot of really good work is being done about this top-down causation, bottom-up causation, and every which way in between. Okay, every level basically can be looked at as causation. And I think I'm going to go to my comments on this. Let's see, I can do that in this way, I think. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure. Is that, can anybody read that?
No. I can't, but maybe somebody in the chat can tell us if they can.
Yeah, I can kind of make it Alt plus. And I got to scoot over a little bit and scoot up a little bit. Anyway, so anyway, who the hell's Dace? I don't know what the hell I'm trying to say there. Okay, I'm looking for a discussion, and I neo-schmeo Darwinio hole, basically. Darwinio a-hole. Who cares? I kind of like how Dave went after this guy, though. He could have been more specific about Noble. Noble is a clown, a brilliant clown who trolls the evolutionary community with force provided by creationists and the Templeton Foundation. Why he does what he does, anyone's guess. I think because he's old and he was bored and he had tenure and, and he just wanted to poke people and kind of stir things up. The third way or extended synthesis sounds like some paradigm shift, but one should consider Dr. Dan Stern Cardinal's response. We already knew that. Dave's Venn-like diagram is the most illuminating. I'll see if I can find that. Now, I like the extended synthesis label, and Dr. Dan hates it. Dr. Dan said, we don't need no stinking labels, There's an interesting meta-discussion to be had over these labels and the warring camps in evil. We are fighting over an emotional response that can be described as emphasis. So Subboor here calls it privileged causation, right? Which cause is more privileged than the other? Is it the mutations? Is it the natural selection? And this kind of harkens back to Jerry Fodor and that bullshit about natural selection. Okay, or one can feel that way about natural selection. Or let's say one might look at the causality of DNA information and feel that this is the most important of all, or one can feel that way about natural selection. One can look at causality as we portray it in our simple ape minds as if it has a starting point and an arrow. The noble camp differ in the direction of that arrow and the feel of what is most important. So that's kind of the most important part of all this. They're talking about they're talking about a complicated system, a dynamical system, right? Yeah. And they're trying to pick out one arrow of cause inside of that big diagram, that big network. And the truth of the matter is there are no fucking arrows. The arrows are something that we put in one little piece of it in order to try to understand what is going on overall. And these guys are they almost came to fisticuffs, the evolutionists, over at some of these meetings over some of this shit, right? And it just doesn't make any sense because they're all right. They're all right. Yeah. And it's like, what the hell? Let's see here. And then I said, reality doesn't even work like that. And that's what I just mentioned. It is my assessment. That's not how causality works. Causality concepts are reductive and only meant to focus on one small aspect at a time. The bottom line is that when you get all the hubbub going amongst scientists, then you will get guys like Subboor picking the cherry and wedging God up evolution's ass. Subboor could not talk about the science. He doesn't know anything about it. And then a guy named Arender, oh my God, I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. Arender Eshando or something. From what I understand, the whole debate about the need for the extended synthesis is not about fact, but interpretation. EES proponents look at the recent findings, which weren't available to the fathers of modern synthesis, and say, look, we need a new synthesis. It's like, it's just, amazing. Anyway, let's see what else we got here. I
I
guess
know you're one of your favorite guys, Eugene Koonin, is all in favor of a new synthesis.
Yeah, and I do like Koonin. He's got a big part of this too. Koonin and there were a bunch of others. God, I forgot. I should have written all their names down. But there are some other really important researchers that are talking about all of this and trying to come up with a new way of analyzing some of these systems, right? And then we can get into that a little bit more. But so Noble has proposed 10 principles of system biology. Let's see if I can put his 10 principles up here and expand it a little bit. There we go. So there's his 10 principles. Who is this guy? I don't think we're going to let this guy. This is Scott.
Oh,
hey,
hey.
Scott.
I thought you were talking about this West Side Girl Reacts. I don't know. Hello. Welcome to the stream.
Hey, I thought you were something before.
Hi, West Side Girl Reacts. Well, I know I screwed up the time. I screwed up the time zones again. You don't want to talk to me.
Okay. Yeah. Well, then I'll just.
But you're in Texas, Austin, right? So.
No, I'm in Michigan.
Oh, you're in Michigan. Okay, but what time zone are you? You're Eastern
Standard Time. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's anybody's guess which way I'm going to go. It's totally random. Okay.
It's partly my fault because I didn't clarify that I'm in Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah, you should. Yeah, we want to always put that EST, CST when we're communicating with speed of sound, because I get very confused when you can go right and left. I never know the difference between those two things. So it's just totally random, like mutation, as to which way I'm going to go.
So it's 3:30 where you are right now, right? Approximately.
Yep. Approximately. Yeah. Anyway.
You gotta remember the sun rises in the east. So if I'm east of you, the sun is, it's higher in the sky for me than it is for you.
I don't understand east and west either, so I'm sorry. I ain't gonna help.
Oh, sorry.
Higher, lower, east, west. I don't know. I don't do that kind of shit. So I'm looking for an extended synthesis for all of that, right? I'm not looking at this old, neo-directional thing that you're looking at. This is bullshit. Okay. So the 10 principles that Noble has proposed, and these are good principles, and like I say, Noble's done some good work. Our biological functionality is multi-level. And we'll get into that a little bit more, because there's some really cool things to be said about that. Transformation of information is not one way, and that's just a repeat of number one. DNA is not the sole transmitter of inheritance, and of course we know that because the environment has a lot to do with how inheritance is transmitted and all that. The theory of biological relativity, there is no privileged level of causality, and that was what I said. There's not one of these things that you can point out as being the way it happens. Gene ontology will fail with higher level insight. And gene ontology is sort of how they have these ontological classifications that you may have seen charts for, or you will see someday. And they're trying to come up with like these almost computer-like definitions of things so they can relate them. But I don't know what the hell he put it in there for. There is no genetic program. Thank you. There are no programs at any other level. There are no programs.
Something's going on with your mic there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It
sounds like you got a butterfly stuck inside of there or something.
Yeah, StreamYard has done this to me.
Man, we're just having all kinds of tech issues today.
I know.
All right.
Yeah, let me switch out. Now?
There you go. I think you're better now.
Okay.
It only does it when you're talking, though, so it's hard to know.
Oh, so I shouldn't talk, is what you're saying?
No. By all means, I was enjoying your talking. Continue.
Okay. There is no genetic program. There are no programs at any other level There are no programs in the brain, the cell, and that is just welcome news to my ears, because this is not a computer program. That's not what's going on in cells. That's not what's going on in biology. And then he says the self is not an object. I'm not sure what the hell he means by it. What the hell is he talking about? And then he says there are many more to be discovered. A genuine theory of biology does not yet exist. And that's the part where he goes off the rails, where he's like, oh, we don't have a theory yet. You know, it's not really a theory. We don't know what's going on. And that's what's wrong. That's why Dennis Noble is a clown.
Yeah.
He's a 90-some-year-old clown who goes on all these shows and comes up with all this bullshit. And anyway, he's written these books here. So The Music of Life.
He does quality work in physiology, which he is a physiologist.
Right.
It's when he starts talking about evolution that he starts to put on clown paint and clown makeup and kind of big honking shoes and, you know, squeaking a little bit. The thing that he does is he uses really vague creationist-y language.
Yeah.
Like he himself, I don't think is a creationist, but he does definitely have some intelligent design leaning going on there. And he uses, like, he talks about how the genes influence the organism, but also the organism influences the genes, which kind of, you know, but he makes it sound like there's a direction to that, or like a front-loaded knowledge of what the genes or the organism needs to survive. And that's where he starts to sound creationist-y and intelligent design-y, even though he himself absolutely accepts evolution. Creationists like Subboor and others cream their pants at the things that this guy says. Like, oh, I can't wait to quote mine this guy, you know? Like, I can't wait to pretend like Dennis Noble agrees with my nonsense, you know? Which I don't think Dennis Noble actually does generally agree with any creationists or intelligent design things, at least not vocally.
He's kind of got this leaning toward teleology or purpose coming in, but teleology is really about teleonomy. Okay, teleonomy is purpose from within, not from outside the system. So anyway, some systems are complicated enough, like living systems have teleonomy from within themselves. It's autopoiesis is basically a self-creating system and self-regulating system. And so teleology is purpose from without, that, you know, a human will design a table, right? Teleonomy is the table just unfolds itself and designs itself.
Right.
And so that's a very, very, very different system. So, and I
didn't
didn't realize
that. Talking about tables, because Subboor spent an inordinate amount of time during this debate on Darwinian evolution talking about Aristotle's theory of forms and how it relates to tables, instead of talking about biology. This was truly one of the most irritating, frustrating, time-wasting debates I've ever watched. Subboor makes very few arguments to actually support his side. And the arguments he does make to support his side, they're like layered with cryptic language and obfuscation, like actually extracting the arguments he makes to support his side. It would take more effort and patience than I'm willing to put into it, because he takes 40 freaking minutes to make like 2 points. It's really irritating. Yeah.
Yeah, and then, back to these four things. The central dogma, is basically talks about how DNA works. It doesn't talk about a law in biology. It's not really a dogma. It was badly named by, I think, Crick, or Watson and Crick. So it was kind of badly named, but and they pick on it like it's some kind of law, and if they, fell the law, then evolution is going to crumble. It's not the case. The central dogma simply tells you that most of the information goes from DNA to RNA to proteins, and that constructs most of the cell. Most of what's going on in the cell. The Weissman barrier is also not a law. It states that what happens in most organisms, because they evolved that way, is the germline is set aside very early in embryonic development. In humans, it's at about, I think, 14 cell divisions. And for the female, the germline is put aside. And for the males, it's put aside and protected. And the reason for that is because you get so many somatic mutations in the life of an organism that basically things would really be crazy. Evolution would run hyperspeed if that germline wasn't set aside. And the Weissman barrier was a long time ago. I don't know when it came up, probably about 1900, where they came up with the idea, where they understood that there was no way for the mutations in your body. If you go out in the sun, it's not going to affect the eggs, basically, in the sperm. If you go out in radiation, it might, So the Weissman barrier is not meant to be a law either. There are cases where that germline can be modified. And one of them is epigenetics. But then that is kind of weird because there's a lot of research has been done on it, and not much has been found where epigenetic modifications can end up in the next generation. Correct. And that famous case of the hungry Danish or Swedes or whatever that were starved by the Nazis, a lot of that had to do with those children were in the womb when that starvation occurred, and they experienced epigenetic modification on their own genomes, and that lasted their lifetime. And then I think there are some cases, like there are mushrooms that have passed down epigenetic modifications 100 generations. So fungus does it, but we're still too early to. And like I say, there are things that happen, but that is not a driving force of evolution. That is not one of those privileged causes at all. That's a small one. Passive vehicle, he's picking on Richard Dawkins there with the selfish gene, and nobody gives a shit what Richard Dawkins says. He said it in 1980 or something like that, or 1970 something. Active genes, passive organism, basically, and that leaves out a different kind of causality, which we'll get into. Randomness, I have a little bit from ChatGPT I'd like to share on that. But randomness is a misunderstanding of statistics, basically. When we talk about what's random, what we're doing is we're applying a mathematical probability model to something like rolling dice, okay? And when you roll dice, basically the randomness will occur in all of the causal areas where we don't have a complete understanding. Like, for instance, the physics of the table, the little bumps on the table, the bumps on the die, the micro weighting of the die, how you flick your wrist. We don't know any of that shit, right? All we know is that if you take a person, get them moving around, you get a table that has a lot of different features. If you do it 1,000,000 times, you're going to end up with, a certain ratio of 6s and 1s and all that. So this straw man of randomness is just, I don't even like applying it to mutation, because mutating the genome, it's not totally random which way those nucleic acids go. It's not totally random which areas get mutated. In fact, the biggest proof of evolution is that there are areas in the genome that are conserved and areas that are not conserved. But at the copy level, basically, we can't predict where the errors are going to be. At the copy level of DNA, you would need to model the entire cell where the duplication is happening in order to figure out exactly how what got mutated and what didn't get mutated. So, like, I could have been splitting a cell, and my mom yelled at me, and I ended up with a mutation because my mom yelled at me.
So what Subboor is doing here in this debate, basically he's saying, hey, here's a scientist who accepts evolution, but wants to try and critique our current model a little bit. That means evolution is wrong, which is like, it's it's enough to make your head spin if you understand who Dennis Noble is, what the modern synthesis is, what the extended evolutionary synthesis is. This is just a guy who accepts evolution, and Subboor is trying to use him as an argument against evolution, which is really bizarre. It's really strange, and I think pretty much everybody on both Professor Dave and James Fodor's channel who, watched the debate made some sort of comment about that. Like, he's literally not making any arguments to support his position. Every argument he's making is a pro-evolution argument. It's really bizarre.
There's only one more part from the debate that I want to play, and I can't remember why I want to play it, but we'll see what they say. But I think watching Professor Dave facepalm is what I liked. So
yeah, is it the part where Subboor spews a racial epithet multiple times? Because we don't have to play that. Yeah.
No, I didn't. Oh my God!
It's really bizarre too, Mike. He uses a racial epithet that's mostly for like South Asian, Indian people, Pakistani people, Punjabi people, and he calls Dave that racial epithet. And Dave is a white guy from America. He's not in any of the group. Like, if you're going to be racist, at least use your racism correctly. Otherwise, you just confuse everybody. And multiple people pointed this out. Like, what are you doing, my guy? Like, the specific racial slur he used is more likely to be applied to him than Dave Farina. And it's bizarre. It's really weird. I don't think that James or Dave understood exactly just how offensive and disgusting this term is, or why Subboor was using it. And it's because he's a racist chucklehead. He's a freaking idiot.
I didn't know that it was that. Professor Dave said, "What does that mean?" And I didn't know what it meant. Nobody knows what it means.
No,
I hope it isn't in here, but we'll see if it is.
Yeah,
we'll try to get done. And then I want to go over and play a little short video that he did. Subboor did on his channel before the debate. So,
you're not even.
What's that? You ready to go?
You're not even. Wait, shred it, because he's not, right? If someone's not an astronaut, do I have to provide evidence that they're not like? What are you talking about?
Can we try this from a different angle? A totally different angle. Okay, totally different angle.
Okay.
Are you aware of the distinction between reductive biology and integrative biology or holistic biology? Are you aware of the distinction between the two?
He's got all these gotchas for Professor Dave that, he keeps dropping all these terms, somatic mutation and a bunch of other shit, genetic assimilation and none of us know everything. We have to look it up.
I'm not aware of the.
He's using a very common pseudoscience, science denier tactic called pedantry. He's being very pedantic. He's using abstruse terms that he himself probably doesn't even really understand. And he's hoping that some members of the audience also don't understand it. And he can appear to be intelligent and try to make Dave look like he doesn't know what he's talking about when Dave teaches college level courses on this subject. So of course Dave knows what he's talking about. He wouldn't be employed to teach people about it at universities if he didn't know what he was talking about. He's done entire videos going into the minutia of this subject, explaining macroevolution, microevolution, explaining specific clades of organisms. Like the guy knows more. He's forgotten more about evolutionary biology than Subboor will ever know.
Right.
But Subboor knows that if he can just put one or two abstruse terms out there, and Dave isn't immediately like, that means this, and this, he can be like, oh, got you. You don't know what you're talking about. Let me educate you. Let me educate you.
Yeah,
it's like, oh my God, what an ego on this guy, the absolute arrogance of him is oh my goodness. It was infuriating to watch.
Dave challenged him a number of times and said, okay, explain the mechanism of that, the science. And he never did. He went on to something else because he doesn't know the mechanism of any of these things.
Yeah, I thought it was funny when he said, let's try this from a completely different angle. Like, he asking permission to do that when that's what he's been doing for the entire debate. Every 3 seconds, he's pivoting to something else. Let's pivot to Aristotle. Let's pivot to the philosophy
causation.
Of let's pivot to this. Let's pivot to that, and avoiding answering direct questions. I would hate it if I were a waiter and I had to wait on Subboor. What would you like to drink, sir? Well, let's go at it from this direction. Like, dude, just tell me what you want.
Right. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna play this last part here. See what happens.
Terms that you're using now. Go ahead.
Okay. So reductive biology is this idea that you break everything down to the genetic level and you go up. Okay, that's the standard gene-centric perspective. Dennis Noble, Ray Noble, James Shapiro, Scott Turner, all of these people from the third way, they believe in the holistic perspective. They believe that you simply don't break everything down to the genetic level. You can actually have a holistic understanding in which there is no privileged level of causality. Okay, so you cannot say genes are working at a privileged level. Now, Sidney Brenner, and he's
what is a privileged level? What does that mean? Don't lecture me. We're talking here.
No, I'm educating you. So let me
you're
explain.
not educating me.
No. Let me explain.
Yeah. Anyway, okay. So basically, he's complaining that we use reduction to explain things, right? To work on a mechanism. Like when you look at a biochemical pathway, like oxidative metabolism or whatever, a biochemist will have all these little diagrams where this happens and that happens, and that's reductive. And if you look at a diagram of genetics, if you're teaching genetics or you're trying to understand genetics, you'll go from DNA to transcription to translation, and you'll show all those steps, right? And he's complaining as if the reductive biologist has the ontology that is what's really going on in the world, in the cell, that the cell is really a machine. It's really a program. It's really this. No, nobody believes that. We already know this. Everybody knows this in biology, or, unless they're novices in biology, they know that the reduction is only a tool that humans use to explain things.
Yeah.
And it's right in the word reduce. You just run it through a little pipe and you just come up with, the highlights, right? And you try to explain it. And so he's claiming that we're all wrong because we believe in this reductive ontology. And well, none of us believe in a reductive ontology. If we did, we'd quit studying the cell, for God's sake.
Right. It's just one viewpoint.
Right. Yeah. Just one little thread out of that big carpet of, crossing threads, the network of knowledge, that sort of thing. And that kind of drives me crazy that people don't understand that reduction is something humans do as a tool, and it's a good tool. I use it all the time. I mean, when I draw my diagrams, I do it. So anyway.
Creationists constantly make attacks like that. That's one of Kent Hovind's favorite attacks that he uses over and over again. He'll take the simplified diagram that has a microorganism and a whale and all the lines drawn, and he'll say, "See, this is what evolution claims. And evolution claims an amoeba turned into a whale." It's like, no, Ken, that is one diagram. It's a visual representation of data that's being used to help explain a simplified version of the idea to kids in biology classes, so that someday they might be able to grasp the more complex version of the idea once that simple idea has been built on and complexified. And, unlike you, who was never able to grasp it, and now lies about it on the internet for money.
Right. and he doesn't understand the mechanism. He doesn't even understand the reductive mechanisms, let alone, what's really going on. Anyway, I'm not sure if there's more here, but we'll try.
Because you don't understand, you don't have anything to say. So I'll explain.
I have plenty to say, right? You're pretending that genetic assimilation is not Darwinian. It is Darwinian, right? The environment exposes existing genetic variation. Natural selection acts on the variation.
I'm gonna keep teaching you and domesticate you. Just don't worry about it.
Okay, don't respond to what I said.
Yeah, blah blah blah. Anyway, so I thought this was interesting. This is basically him talking about his plan. And I've got to get rid of this screen. How do I boot this thing? Remove. And wait a minute. I want to get it out of here. Stop screen. Hope I didn't stop the wrong thing. I don't want to stop the screen that controls everything, right? That would be horrible if I did that. Okay. This share screen thing I thought I was done with this, but then my sound quit working. I used to be able to do this on OBS. I liked it a lot better. Let's see, creationists who suck. That's you. Let's see. That's you. The name of your video. Cowardly and incompetent. Okay, it's right there. Okay, share. And I got to go to theater mode here. But anyway, I thought this was interesting.
The plan for the debate, I'm sure you guys want to know, and I'm sure he wants to know. So why not just give it to him? Why not just give it to you guys? Let you guys know what's going to happen on the debate day. I am going to simply show that this man is a coward and he's incompetent. And I'm going to stick to the topic, and I'm going to show he's a coward.
I almost spat out my drink when he said he's going to skip to
staying on the topic, while being very clear, while making arguments, while giving evidence.
Yeah.
What is he going to do? He is going to try and muddy the waters. He's going to try and
with facts
turn this entire debate into a mudslinging match of insults and Karen-like behavior. But I refuse to let that happen, Mr. Farina. I cannot let that happen. That's not what the audience wants. That's not what the people want. How do the people want? The people want a lively, substance-based debate. So I know you're not going to answer the question. I know is Darwinian evolution a fact is not even on your radar in terms of answering that particular question. It's just going to be a bunch of insults from you and a bunch of random red herrings. However, I'm going to enjoy the debate because
his entire argument was a red herring.
Incompetent and you're a coward. Now, how am I going to show you're a coward? Isn't that a puzzle? How about, well, it's very simple, actually. Before we get into this debate, you've already labeled yourself a coward by refusing to come to London and having a face-to-face debate, something every...
Okay, so I made a comment on his video down here, and I said, I am a coward. I am afraid to fly to London for 6 hours with my legs cramped into a hamster seat, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he wants Dave Farina to fly to London and have fish and chips with him, and it's like, flying to London is kind of a big deal. And if you can afford $3,000 for first class, it ain't so bad. But if you can't, it is like being sent to that place that our president is sending the immigrants right now. I forget what. I mean, it's horrifying.
Yeah,
I almost died when I went to London. I was thinking about becoming a citizen at the UK because I didn't want to fly back home. Because I didn't want to go through that flight again. And I tried to upgrade to first class, and I think my credit card was like $200 short of the $3,000 I needed. But I would have paid it if I could have. It's like, what do you mean, coward, you asshole?
Everybody. Well, before we continue, I have a couple points about that. Dave addressed this claim. He had receipts. He had emails. He made phone calls on recording to the venue where Subboor claimed he set up a debate with Dave. He has the emails where Subboor never gives him a means of contacting him, but he gave him this this other organization's email, and he was communicating with them. Subboor set up he asked Dave what dates work for him. And Dave specifically said, I can't do these dates in August. And that is, of course, when Subboor decided to set up their debate.
Okay.
But Dave was actually willing to
He
go
was willing to
debate
go over
this
that.
guy,
Oh,
which is incredibly magnanimous of Dave, because this
Yeah.
guy he's bottom of the barrel. He's low tier. He has
Right.
nothing to offer anybody. And he debates like a child, as you saw, like a juvenile high schooler slinging mud. The way he's accusing Dave of everything that he actually did in this debate is mind-blowing to me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
this claim that Dave has been running from a debate with him is absolute nonsense.
Right.
He has no evidence to support this.
I didn't realize all that was going on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that we could have been on a boat on the Thames and seen Big Ben, and we could have spent some quality time, but you denied me that. Instead, you just are making videos and crying. All right, fine. I mean, the cowardice is pretty easy to establish. It's been established even before the debate began, no problem. How am I going to show you I'm competent? Isn't that a puzzle? How about somebody who goes around calling themselves a professor but doesn't have a PhD, doesn't have a single peer-reviewed paper, and acts like a Karen? That's a pretty sufficient reason for someone to be labeled incompetent. So cowardice and incompetence is what I'm going to show on the day. What I'm also going to do is take you off your script. Take you off your script.
What
I'm
script?
going to take you away from the show. I know you want to stick to the show. I know you want to just stay in the zone that you're comfortable with. But I'm going to take you to the deep waters until you discover yourself.
This might be the cringiest fucking thing I've ever watched in my life.
Yep, that's pretty
I
cringy.
might collapse in on myself like a dying star with how dense the pure cringe of that was. That was hypergravity level cringe. Oh my God, this guy is fucking delusional.
Yep.
Oh man. You know what?
So, okay.
Seeing that explains a lot to me about what kind of fans, why this guy has the fans that he has in such numbers. He's all about bluster. He's all about arrogance. He's all about rhetoric and confidence. He's basically a con man. He exudes extreme confidence because he is so delusional. And his audience misinterprets that confidence as actual expertise when the guy's a fucking idiot. He has zero actual expertise when it comes to biology, so much so that he had to concede the topic of the debate. Like the one time that the discussion was actually on topic, he immediately conceded. Of course, he didn't admit that he conceded, but we all saw it.
There's a couple things. There's somatic hypermutation. That's one of the gotchas that he brought up for Dave. So somatic hypermutation is there's basically cells in your I forget what they are in your immune system. I'm not an immune system expert, but there are cells in your immune system that have enzymes that cause hypermutation, basically. When they're stressed out, when they're stressed. I think one of them is activation-induced cytidine deaminase.
It's like it's an immunological or homeostasis-based response.
Yeah, and what happens is it rapidly mutates certain hotspots in your genome, and what that does is you got all these mutating immune cells, and one of them will lock into that virus basically, and take it out, and then start reproducing and develop an immune system. However, that is one case where the Weissman barrier has not been broken. It does not get into the germline. When that happens to you, when you acquire immunity to some particular disease, you do not pass it on to your kids. Okay, they have to do it all by themselves. They have to also hypermutate and do it. And there's been no case that we have found where that gets into the germline and actually changes immune cells, with some caveats. And the caveat is genetic assimilation, which is something that Waddington discovered, I think, in 1920 or something like that, or very early.
I want to make a slightly pedantic correction, Mike. I think what you meant to say is genetic accommodation, of which genetic assimilation is a subtype.
Oh, right. Yeah, it is. Yes. Yeah. So basically what he did is he mutated some fruit flies, And then he naturally selected the fruit flies that succumbed to the mutation and survived. And they went on to mutate a few more times, 14 generations. And then, without any epigenetic modification or stress, they actually ended up with a genetic modification that created the same mutation. And there's a reason why that happens, and it's really cool. And it has a lot to do with, let me see if I can get this on. It has a lot to do with evolution, actually.
The specific adaptation was cross-veinless wing structures. Normally, the fruit fly wings, they have cross veins in them that make them more sturdy. Actually, if anything, them being produced without those cross veins probably impeded maneuverability. It wasn't like a selective advantage. It was selected for, I think, by the experimenter himself, Waddington. It was selected to demonstrate an example of genetic assimilation, which is when, like you were saying, a change in the structure, or what is called a plasticity, when a trait is acquired due to not genetics, but due to an environmental stressor or some sort of environmental stimulus, it causes a change in the body type, right? And then he was able to show that you can, the genetic code of an organism can assimilate these environmental stimulus caused phenotype changes, and then eventually produce develop organisms that have those features without the environmental stimulus. It becomes a part of the genetic code which develops the organism.
Yeah. And this has a whole hell of a lot to do with how evolution works, actually. Let's see.
It does,
what is going on here? Why is this not working? This part.
And like I was saying, it's a subtype of genetic accommodation, which genetic accommodation can occur in a variety of instances, including instances where the response to the environmental stimulus actually is a survival advantage, is a selective advantage that selection actively prefers, right? Like if, for instance, like if you have a species of frogs that lives in an environment where sometimes it gets really cold, that might cause some of the frogs to be born a darker color. And, that darker color might be an advantage, it might be a disadvantage. If it's an advantage, accommodation will act on it, and it can actually act on it in a larger variety of ways than assimilation will. It can keep it plastic, wherein it's not genetic. It is caused by the environmental pressure. It can select even further for it, like it can prefer the darker frogs or the frogs that get darker faster. It's kind of like it's a very complicated subject. You might I can make a metaphor that I think kind of helps explain it, though, right? Like if continuing in the theme of an environment where coldness happens, if you are an organism, a human that lives in an environment where coldness happens, you might start wearing your jacket more frequently, right? Assimilation is you just wear your jacket all the time now. You wear it inside. You wear it even when it's not cold. Accommodation is like you wear your jacket based on what's happening in the environment.
So if you have a population, right, and you put it under stress, so you've got, and my line is a little bit off here, but see if I can get a line. So you've got the normal environment down here, and then all of a sudden the environment comes up with a stressor, right? And that stressor lasts for a long time. Okay, what might happen? Or did I lose you, Austin? I lost you, Austin. Okay, so what happens with this is this particular subset of the population will basically end up with an epigenetic modification that saves them. So this population will be extant in that part of the stress, right? It will survive. Whereas these guys, they get killed. All of them get killed because they don't have the machinery. They don't have the developmental, or they don't have the genetic regulatory networks that can allow this epigenetics to save their asses. Okay. So now we got this population, and it goes forward, and it keeps breeding and breeding and breeding. And eventually, because it already has those little networks set up, all it takes is a few mutations to bring that network into the genome. So now it's fired back into the genome. An actual mutation has happened, and they no longer need the epigenetic modification. Does that make sense?
100%.
So yeah, what we're dealing with is subpopulations. And what Waddington did is he picked that subpopulation of fruit flies that were capable of surviving those mutations. And then he kept breeding them. And after a few more mutations, those became developmental realities in the organism. And this happens all the time. And this is one of the really important parts where the extended synthesis starts making sense, because we're not just dealing with mutation and natural selection. We're dealing at a population level as well. And we're dealing with these things called developmental gene regulatory networks. And these are the most important thing. And this explains the Precambrian. So they're developmental. Oh, that's a bad color. I don't like that one. So developmental gene regulatory networks. And they are a big thing. So there's all sorts of bizarre networks going on. And you've seen all these diagrams where one molecule sets off another molecule and branches off and sets, and it keeps branching and whatever. And this particular one is the one that allows the organism to survive, right?
Yeah.
But these other networks are in there. This is like junk DNA. These proteins are being created down here, but they're not able to do anything because this one works so well that it sort of takes over. Now, if you keep the environment constant, like Lenski is keeping his bacteria's environment constant, eventually these things right here will die. They'll basically get deleted. And the creationists will say, oh, Lenski is reverse evolution, right? Because I think the genes for attacking ribose died. Because Lenski did not change the environment. He just kept glucose and lactic acid as or I think it was glucose as the primary food source, right? If he had changed it up. Now, if this particular organism, if the environment changed so that there was none of this stuff available, then this genetic network would become common, and with a few more modifications would be the one that ends up in the future. And what happened with the Cambrian, which is really interesting, is there are these core networks to develop a very simple organism like a worm or some flat thing that just ingests foods and goofs around on the surface. And then all it took is a few modifications to create a different body plan, to create the echinoderms, create the sponges, create the whatever, the protovertebrates, the bilateral symmetry. Yeah. And what happened is when these things, like when you came out with bilateral symmetry, you had the core, plus you had all these other networks around it that made the organism more complex. And then we get out to where humans are, and we have just tons of these networks, right? And that's why you can't turn a human into a cat, because you have to go all the way back down and peel off all these layers and go back down to the core genetic network, right? You'd have to go back down to a real simple life form and then build it up again. And now during the Cambrian, this core network was pretty much what all of the multicellular animals had, and it allowed them to create a diverse, massively diverse range of different body plans and types, out of which I think, about 7 survived. And that's what isn't understood. And there's somebody, Eric Davidson was a brilliant geneticist that understood everything about how the echinoderm develops. And he come up with these gene regulatory networks. He wrote a book on them. And unfortunately, he passed away young of a heart attack. And we lost Eric Davidson, but he was working on some really powerful information about how evolution works and why the Cambrian explosion happened and all of that. So anyway, that's something that I'm spending a lot of time thinking about and working on these days, is these regulatory networks. But the interesting thing is that, where the hell is it? We have, let's see, where is it? I don't know where the interesting thing is. I forgot the intro. We have all of all of this junk laying around. It's not junk, it's junk drawer. Okay. There's all these different mechanisms that almost work. And 1 or 2 mutations in this population, there'll be a group that has just a few more mutations, so that when this population gets its ass kicked, this population will become prominent and it will start using that mechanism. And now we have a divergence, we have a branch. And if these 2 things were on separate islands, these guys might survive the way they are. These guys would proceed and start evolving. And that's how speciation happens. It has to do with these
specific version of it is geographic isolation.
Yeah.
It's not one of the more common kinds of speciation, but it does occur. I wanted to say too, if you could go back to the genetic assimilation kind of diagram. Well, you don't have to. I can make the point without you going back to the diagram. But I wanted to say, this itself isn't natural selection, but natural selection still acts on this.
Yeah, natural selection
is a part of natural selection.
Right. Natural selection and mutation are just like they're tautologically real. I mean, they're at the absolute core of all this stuff. And when they want to say, "Oh no, we need to throw that out," bullshit. Everything that you talk about is going to depend on those mutations happening. There would not have been any genetic assimilation out here if when I'm using the eraser. There wouldn't have been any, it would not have happened out here if it weren't for mutation. This thing has to randomly mutate until it gets the right lock to use that mechanism that prior organisms used epigenetics to inspire or to turn on, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And these networks are incredibly, I mean, if you started to draw the networks, you'd just end up with a rug. You'd weave a rug, right? If you try to draw them all. There's so much junk drawer DNA and RNA going on in our cells, and they're all active. They're all, a lot of them are like what the hell was the assholes in 2010 that the ENCODE project. Okay, they showed that a lot of this stuff gets transcribed, and some of it gets translated, and all that stuff gets thrown away unless it locks into one of these networks. Unless you stress the environment and it's needed. Now, I wish Lenski would, if he had a couple $100 billion in funding, he could create, like 1,000 different projects where they modified the environment in different ways.
Yeah.
And they would end up showing whatever, but that isn't what Lenski's trying to do. He's trying to show at a very, very reduced level what happens if the environment is constant, so if it's just one thing. And they're always picking on Lenski's experiments. There's the latest pick I heard is that the ribose gene was deleted. Of course it was. There was no fucking ribose. So eventually something was going to screw that mechanism up, right? And nothing was going to save it. So anyway, I rant a bit. Yeah.
No, I wanted to say because Subboor kind of like he was invoking genetic assimilation as if it's something different from natural selection, and it's really not. And I think Dave did correct him on that and say, Subboor, that's just it's a niche version of variation that natural selection still acts on. It's not something different from natural selection. And what's even weirder about that is you're still not making an argument against evolution, my guy.
Yeah.
It's so bizarre. And
all
I
you're
think
doing,
yeah, go ahead.
All they're doing is showing how evolution actually works.
Exactly.
It's more complicated than that, right?
It's weird. I saw a lot of comments saying, Subboor did this entire debate without entering a single argument for his side. It's even worse than that. He actively argued against his own side when he wasn't busy conceding the debate. It's a really weird debate.
I don't understand why this does not work. So StreamYard has screwed something up really bad, so that I can't get that to go full screen. It does that instead. And then if I do this, it's like, what the hell is going on here, StreamYard? I don't understand what it's doing. Why is it way over there on the left? That doesn't make any sense. There we go. That's the one. Yeah, they have too many icons, I think. But anyways, so the other thing is we have, we've got our levels down here where we have mutation and NS, natural selection, basically going on. And then the organism develops, and then there's these other levels above where all these different things that are happening in the organism, and this basically is the bottom up, that feeds up and creates all that stuff, right? But there's also mechanisms that go from the top down, and there's mechanisms that go from this level to that level, and then there's mechanisms that go from that level and skip a couple levels and go up there. And so this is sort of the what they're talking about, the extended synthesis, as we're looking at different kinds of causality. Like, for instance, I was talking about how the population affects things. Well, this could be the population level, right? And it's going to affect the genome as much as the genome is going to affect it. So it's a dynamical system with states going both ways, and causality going both ways. And genetic assimilation just shows you something happening from the top down rather than from the bottom up, that sort of thing. And that's what's going on. I had a nice talk with ChatGPT that got pretty deep. I don't know if we have the energy to get into it. Certainly. But I was talking about, at some point, an organism is a thing that moves and affects its environment, right? And so an organism has intention, with a T, not an S. So an organism basically does something to the environment, and that something for the environment is going to affect other organisms, and it's also going to affect itself, basically. So it goes both ways, right? So we have this intentionality built into organisms. And as animals evolved, we ended up with more and more complicated nervous systems, to where our intentions became our environment became internal. Like consciousness, our brain deals with an internal sort of, I hate the word representation, but I don't know of a better word, but an internal representation of something that we intend to do. So it all becomes internal, and that becomes top-down causation, because that can affect whether or not, for instance, if I decide to drink vodka all day long, I'm not going to have that many children. So intentionality basically affects how the population is going to evolve. And when the organism becomes more complex, you end up with more and more layers of this intentionality. But at the very basic prokaryotic bacterial level, we have intentionality. We have an organism that's going to move toward or move away from something. And that's kind of the basis of the naturalistic philosophy that I'm developing. So anyway, there's one other thing I want to show before, but this is interesting. If you try to diagram what's happening in an organism, basically. Okay, you got the mommy, your mommy's born down here, and then your daddy's born down here. Okay. And then your mommy and your daddy get together, and because your mommy loves your daddy, they both create you, so you start right here, right? And then mommy and daddy go on and they die. But here's where the germline comes up here and then crosses over here and becomes another organism. And then it crosses over there and becomes another organism. And it just keeps going, right? And when you draw the diagram of life, you can see with sexual organisms how complicated this interconnection is. And this whole thing has to be put into a population model. So if you write a computer program to try to generate or simulate, what's going on in evolution, this is a diagram that you have to deal with, basically. And you can imagine how, if I drew all the lines for a small town in Minnesota, how many lines I would have to draw in order for this to happen over a period of 30 years to show what's going on. So anyway, that also is stuff that I'm working on and thinking about. So
we got a Dr. Dan in the chat.
We have Dr. Dan. So
Yes.
Dr. Dan, we're talking about extended synthesis, and I love it, and you hate it. I love anything new.
I don't have much of a strong opinion either way on it. I think it's all kind of just evolution. If anything, extended synthesis is kind of just a label, is how I think about it. But yeah, I mean, I'm not much of a fan of either or. I just want to understand the mechanisms of how living systems adapt to the environments and change. It doesn't really matter to me so much what you call it, extended synthesis or modern synthesis, whatever. I mean,
well, the problem happens when they do what these guys are doing and what Dennis Noble does, and that's why Noble, I call him a clown, because they say, you guys are all wrong. You're all wrong about your thinking. We have to take the extended synthesis, and it's like, no. Like Dr. Dan, I attributed it to you that you said we already knew that shit. We already know what's going on here. It's not like we're, like we totally missed the last 40 years in evolutionary biology. We've been reading the papers, and so
yeah.
But there are good things that they come up with, and there are good, like Philip Ball and all those guys at the Royal Society when they got together in 2016. They opened up this big can of basically biosemiotics and this new kind of thinking about systems. So makes the stuff says we need to consider that we already do. Yeah. In complete new. Yeah. And they want to attribute this new thinking to woo. I mean, they're always looking to where they can shove God up your butt.
Yeah.
It's like complicated.
I think there's a confluence of factors to it. Part of it is, people are promoting their own individual work. Like, I think you see that a lot with like Lynn Margulis, who is like, endosymbiosis was her thing. And she's like, it's all endosymbiosis and nobody's paying enough attention to endosymbiosis. And my endosymbiosis is going to revolutionize everything. And I think that's part of it. And then another part of it is, people want to use language that captures attention. They want to make big, profound statements that everybody sits up and looks like. Your boy Eugene Koonin kind of did that a little bit. He said the modern synthesis is dead, and and evolution. People who understand evolutionary biology, they hear that and like, oh, well, this is very interesting. But a creationist hears that and practically comes in their pants, and they're like, oh my God, I can't wait to misrepresent this guy's statement as if he's saying that evolution itself is dead, when he's really talking about, just tweaking our understanding of it. But that doesn't bring in as big of a views. That's not like, that doesn't get people to sit up at like meerkats and like pay attention.
People like Lynn Margulis, when they come up with something, right, at first it sounds batshit crazy to everybody until they all, see the research and start seeing the mechanism, and they think about it for a while and they assimilate it, right? And then and she kind of got a bad hand dealt to her, and a lot of these people have. They've been shouted down at conferences, and they've almost, gotten punched in the face over this stuff. But the really neat thing is there are people like Mary Schweitzer who came up with soft tissue and dinosaurs, right? And everybody said, "Oh, bullshit! You're a quack. You're a nut." She didn't just get all pissed off and start spouting all over YouTube about how close-minded we were. She went and did enough research to show that what she found was real. And then she became accepted into the fold. And that's what everybody has to do, is just chill the fuck out and stop, screaming at each other. And when somebody comes up with something new, we have to just, sit back and say, okay, well, explain that to me and tell me how that works and show it to me, And if they don't show it to you, then it's gone. And if they do show it to you, then we're going to assimilate that into our body of knowledge. So.
Yeah, but it unfortunately, like you're saying about Noble and Lynn Margulis was the same thing, and Eugene Koonin was the same thing when he made that statement. It provides fodder to creationists. And the general genre of that specific fodder is misrepresenting scientific debates about the minutia of the theory, which that does happen. Right. And conflating that with, they're thinking about rejecting the core tenets. They're thinking about, they're going to refute evolution itself. Which is never going to happen. I put the odds at about the same as apples just start falling into the sky tomorrow. We might find data that contradicts evolution, but the odds of that are ridiculously low. Evolution is a very robust theory. The core concepts of evolution are extremely well supported. Mutations, genetic drift, heritable variation, horizontal gene flow in general, hybridization, random mutation, and natural selection. Those things are not going anywhere. What people are arguing about is, hey, maybe this endosymbiosis thing contributes to evolution more than we've appreciated. Yeah. Which, maybe, it's like, it's not really that big of an argument, I don't think. It definitely doesn't. It's, okay, so I think what's happening is creationists, they have a religious scripture that's very dogmatic, and it is very shaky. And what happens with evolution is it pulls out one of those pivotal bricks, the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve. Yeah. If evolution is real, there was no Adam and Eve. There was no Garden of Eden. There was no original sin. There was no need for God to sacrifice Jesus to absolve original sin. The whole thing comes crashing down like a shaky, unstable Jenga tower. And I think what they kind of do is they think evolutionary science, and evolutionary biology is the same way. It's this shaky, unstable Jenga tower. And if they can just pull out, microevolution or transitional fossils or some brick or block here or there, the whole thing will come tumbling down. Yeah. And I don't really think that's accurate. I think what evolution is more like is like a very intricate, large Lego structure that's made up of literally hundreds of thousands of pieces, some bigger, some smaller, but literally just an immense number of pieces that have been built into a comprehensive, interwoven structure that makes an incredible amount of sense. So if you're going to hope to actually change the form of evolution, you need to do a lot more than to just pull out a brick here and there. You need to basically disassemble the entire structure and build it into something else from the ground up, which the odds of even a couple of those pieces getting busted off at this point, ridiculously low. The odds that the whole thing is going to get disassembled and reassembled into a form that's unrecognizable to its current form, it's just laughable. And I think that's why creationists generally get laughed at, especially when they take the Jenga tower approach. The scientific community is like, okay, there are no transitional fossils. What does that change? Even if I accept you're right, which of course you're not, there's tons of transitional fossils. But even if I do accept it, we still got ERVs, we still got genetics, we still have all these other pieces of evidence that form this structure. You're not actually affecting it as much as you think you are. But creationists love patting each other on the back and, you know, kind of just posting their tortured nonsense online. And it certainly makes a lot of money for many of them. So,
right.
you know, they're not likely to accept that critique.
These, that you hit up on something really important. That Jenga tower or whatever. They keep coming up with these one-off things, right? One-off things where one paper will, it's refuted something, so the whole tower is going to crumble, and it never does. I mean, it just doesn't work that way,
right?
And it's just absolutely ridiculous, and that is a way that their creation myth and their foundation works, and so they think the whole world of science has to work that way too, and that's kind of crazy. So I'm going to pull something up here, and this is like the least complicated of all of them. So where is it at here? Let's see. I gotta try to make it bigger before I put it on the screen. Where are we? Got it. Okay, now I got to figure out which screen it is again. Okay, but that's a gene regulatory network, basically. And what you see here is at the top, those dashed lines are, say, a signal that comes into the cell. MAPK is like a signal protein that basically tells the cell to do something, and then it goes down into all these different networks, and the arrows basically tell you that the gene is going to be turned on, and these little things over here where you have a little bar that tells you that the gene is turned off. And this goes through, and the ultimate result of all this is apparently FOXB and FOXO. And I can't remember which diagram this is exactly. But when you look at gene regulatory networks, this one is the simplest that we have. This one, let's see if I can do this. Oh, I guess that doesn't work. But I showed the picture of, okay, here's a better one. Here's another one for you. That's more like it. So this is in the development of the echinoderm, right, basically. And it tells you how the cells basically get changed so that one will be a liver and one will be a heart and whatever. But these mechanisms basically are all over. And the worst part about this is these are the ones that work. These are the ones that we research. All around this, if you were to overlay all of the junkyard DNA that's in the genome and the junkyard RNA that's in the genome that also enters into these networks, it would be black with the amount of stuff that's going on. And then when there's an environmental change or a stressor or something happens to the population, those other lines, those other connections with just a few mutations can connect up and create an entirely different path. And that's how evolution works. And that's what creates limbs from fins and all of that stuff. So anyway.
And so we know a lot about different groups of these genetic sequences, right? Like a big one is one we've talked about a couple of different times is the Hox genes, right? That is a really good example because like we have done a ton of experiments with those now where we can directly manipulate body plans and change the way that an organism develops based on those Hox genes. And it's really obvious when a Hox gene has failed, right? Like when it's mutated or something wrong is happening. Like if a baby's born with 4 legs, probably something wrong with a Hox gene somewhere in there.
Yep.
And also those Hox genes are really relevant to a point you made earlier about the Cambrian explosion, because they can help explain how those different body plans that allowed organisms to diversify into a whole massive host of unoccupied niches fairly easily.
Yeah. And I think it was and the Hox genes, as you go forward into more and more complex multicellular animals, you'll find out that they got duplicated, like in humans, like about 7 times. And there are different cassettes of Hox genes in different chromosomes, and that allows further development. And once you get a liver that's doing something, it's doing something, some metabolic function, right? And you got all these liver cells, and the blood is going through the liver before after it leaves the digestive system, and then a very slight mutations will create a new pathway to do something else biochemical to that food or toxins, and either knock out a toxin or find a new way to use food. And that's how, and then a new set of Hox genes is turned on for those cells. And what's going on here is they're showing basically like the endoderm. Basically, when these genes turn on, you have endoderm. When these genes turn on, you have endomesoderm. And then you have the vegetal pole of the I think this is echinoderm, I think. And it's
really interesting.
It's very, very complicated when you trying to learn all this shit is driving me nuts. I'm gonna go crazy trying to.
You need to go back to college. Come join my classes, Mike.
Oh, for college, you learn stuff so slowly compared to how fast I'm learning stuff. I just don't want to do it. I just don't want to do it.
And it costs money.
Yeah, it costs money too. Oh, what else do I got here? There's a wonderful diagram that I kind of want to find.
So you talked about how Hox genes developing and producing new limbs can be a driver of evolution. I think another great example of how Hox genes can be a driver of evolution is when they do the opposite, when they attenuate or eliminate existing limbs. And a great example of that is whale evolution. And I love whale evolution so much because it's so well proven. There's all those transitional forms. There's all these vestigial features on the whales. And the Hox genes definitely played a role in that, like the attenuation of their legs. Another reason I really love whale evolution is because Genesis straight up says God created the whales. And that contradicts that so well. It's like, gosh, how can you not see that this is a fable? Oh,
does
man.
Genesis actually mention the whale?
Yep, it sure does.
Like, oh, wow, really?
Yep.
I'll be damned. Wow.
Maybe Scott can tell us more about that. He probably can give us chapter and verse and all that stuff.
I am trying to find a diagram and I can't find it. I think it's pretty cool.
I think it says he made the whales on the same day as all the other ocean organisms.
Oh my!
Or however it specifically puts it.
Yeah.
I'm not a biblical scholar, so
but
I know it does mention that he made them.
Okay, I ran it through Copilot, and the response was the King James Version mentions whales.
Okay.
Genesis 1:21, but great sea creatures, monsters of the deep. Those are some other ways that it's been translated into other versions. So yeah, it does technically. We do have a version that mentions the whales.
And I think that's one of the reasons creationists push back against whale evolution so much and come up with all kinds of talking points and nonsense about it, because they really need that one to not be true, because it so directly contradicts, the account in Genesis.
What gets me, one thing that can settle a whole lot of this, like with whale evolution, the science has methods of comparing, morphologies, looking at the different fossils, the way, the bones are constructed and the way they fit together, and then how you relate them cross species. You never hear a creationist talk about that. That's how you come up with the notion these guys are related.
Right.
But there's no mention of bringing down the methodology. Just deny. You can't prove it.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of stuff.
Here's something interesting. Here we have the frog, and we have the zebrafish, and a chicken, and a mouse, and a human, right at the top. And these are when the organism starts out, right? It goes through this kind of like massively different sort of. This relates to Haeckel and all the shit they give Haeckel, right? It goes through all these different phases, but then it comes to something called the phylotypic stage, where these guys right here in this row really bear a resemblance to each other. And these are actual, nobody pulled a Haeckel here. These are actual, this is what they actually look like, right? And then, of course, they go down and they create a frog. And, oh, you can't see the frog because my goddamn name's in there. You see the frog and the chicken and the mouse. But this phylotypic stage is really an interesting phase in development that they all seem to go through. And it means that these ancient genetic regulatory networks, or DGRNs, are still functioning in all of us, one of the cores. But the interesting thing is that they diverge early on, and they become kind of a different developmental mechanism. So anyway, but that wasn't the diagram I wanted to show you guys. I'll never find it. I have too many diagrams. Anyway, should we, you want to open this up, or is anybody out there interested in coming in, or should we give it up? Or
I'm talking to Ian Chen on my channel. He might be interested in coming on stage and talking a little bit. He just said,
okay.
When are we going to do another chat on my channel? He always enjoys them. So I don't know. He might be interested.
I can put the link out there and see if anybody wants to come in and comment on some of this stuff. But there's so much more.
While we're waiting on that, mentioning creationists won't talk about how the science is done.
Yeah.
Somebody who's not afraid of talking about how the science is done, I guess I'll put this in the private chat, is the one and only Gutsick Gibbon. She did a recent video about the new smallest human relative discovered, which was a Paranthropus something or another. I can't remember the subspecies name. And she showed how the bones were studied. It was exciting to watch, because you wonder about this. How detailed do they get? What kind of data do they look at when they're classifying these new discoveries? And she shows you, and you know how it's done. And if you want to offer a critique of how paleontologists do it, then go right ahead. Creationists won't do it because they will lose, because they can't do science. They can only do misinformation.
So I want to play this, the little treat from B.S. Lewis. That kind of like dovetails into this discussion, that sort of thing about not wanting to talk about the science. But
I did watch that video, Scott. It was very good. Yeah,
and I'm not going to play the whole video for you guys. You're going to have to go to B.S. Lewis's channel and take a look at it there. But anyway, I put it out there for you. But we'll play a little bit.
Another wild and wacky day in the world of evolution. I saw this article yesterday on the evolution of buttholes, and I thought, I've got to make a video about this, because where would we be without our buttholes? Where would we be without our buttholes? I don't even want to think about it. Anyway, I hate to be the butthole crowd all over a beautiful theory, but the real poopers and shakers don't have a butthole. I mean, wouldn't an anus be helpful for them? My butthole had its origin in this worm's sperm hole. My butthole had its origin in this
Okay, you got to go watch the rest on B.S. Lewis's channel.
Oh my God.
It is awesome. Isn't that awesome?
Yeah. So it's interesting because that actually is a big aspect of evolution, especially taxonomy, because earlier, less complex organisms, they didn't have two different digestive openings. They had a single digestive opening. I think they're called
like sponges,
eupisticons or something like that.
Yeah.
Deuterostomes. Aaron Ra knows this really well. God, I wish I was as knowledgeable about it as he is. But basically, they had a single digestive opening. They expel and excrete waste out of the same opening in which they take in nutrients. We are deuterostomes, meaning we expel waste out of a different opening, which I think is preferable for all of us because, you know, it gets rid of that shitty aftertaste.
Yeah, it does. Hi, Ian. Anyway.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Yeah. I was
actually at the gym, but I rushed back to get this.
I have some amazing diagrams about how the mouth forms and then the anus forms, or the anus and then the mouth, but I can't find them either. I have to name these diagrams.
Yeah, I think if I recall correctly, in terms of embryological development, you start off as a blastome, right? You start off as this conglomeration of cells. Those cells divide and divide and divide until you're basically a little ball of, you know, protein and organic material. And the first thing that actually develops is, you know, this crevice that deepens. And it's basically the first thing about you that develops is your butthole. You start off as nothing but an asshole. And unfortunately, a large number of people never develop beyond that stage.
Yeah. So it kind of looks like this. Basically, this is the outer cell. Okay, the cells form on the outside, and then you get a little indent, and then these things do this epithelial to mesenchymal transformation, and they start floating around inside of it, right? And it forms this one big vacuole right here. And then at some point, this becomes the anus, and then it punches through over here, and you end up with the mouth. And there's all of this. These things turn inside of each other, like these are the directions that the cells go. And what's happening is these developmental gene regulatory networks are being set up. And the interesting thing about development is that every cell in your body is a unique self organism, right? All by itself. And it has an environment around it, which are the other cells. Like in your brain, you know, your neurons have astrocytes, and they're in an environment, right? So every cell's in an environment. But when it starts out at this level, there aren't too many different kinds of cells. They haven't differentiated enough yet. And this sort of this thing rolls around, and then at some point a trench will form, a little ridge will form in that organism, and it folds inward, and then it closes over at the top, and that becomes your spine and brain. And that develops out of your skin, basically the outside of the organism. So the ectoderm, and it folds in. So it's really cool. And I'm boring the shit out of Ian. I'm boring Ian.
You know what I love about that, Mike, is that we've done microphotography capturing snapshots of that process. Right. Yeah, and we've been able to animate time lapses where you can now watch a fetus develop from, you know, a little blastome into a zygote, into watch all those features conglomerate and, you know, convalesce, and then you get a human fetus at the end of the process. And I think that's really interesting because creationists make an argument all the time. They say, show me a human developing from a single-celled organism.
This is it.
Every single human does. It's like, are you kidding me?
That's where I was talking to that Tony guy on Smokey's channel a long time ago, and that's where I ended up with the name Speed of Pudding. I was trying to explain to him about microenvironments on the Earth, and I asked him at some point. I said, "Did you think it was all pudding? Right? Did you think the Earth was just one big mass of one kind of thing? Right? And there are all these but anyway."
So Mike,
Yeah.
Speed, tell me, where did you learn so much about assholes?
I lived with a
Is
few.
there a personal experience story or something you'd like to share?
I married a few and I lived with a few. I was born of a few. I come from a long line of assholes.
Ah,
Yeah.
We're all assholes, as
Yeah.
often said at some point, or
Chief asshole.
some of us still are.
Yeah. So Ian, I decided to put PhD after my name from now on as presently high school dropout.
That's good.
I think that makes sense, doesn't it?
No, I like it. I didn't realize
This is
smart.
This is the formation of the neural tube right here. This thing basically closes up and turns into a circle, and that becomes your spine. And at one end, it becomes your brain. And but that's how it starts developing. And the interesting thing is these cells here on top, they start to constrict, so they become smaller, and the ones on the bottom become bigger, and it forms this little divot. And it forms a ridge in the like many organisms develop the nervous system this way. So it's kind of an old pattern for nervous system. So anyway.
Yeah, development is so fascinating. And I think the homologous aspects of development that are common across just this massive host of vertebrate species, super strong evidence for evolution, right?
Yes.
Like
yes.
incredible evidence for evolution. The way that, all these different vertebrate organisms develop, there's the homologous development, and then there's also the homologous features that are produced by this homologous development. Yeah. The fact that like every vertebrate has like 7 neck vertebrae, like even a giraffe has 7 neck vertebrae, even though their neck is like 18 times as long as my neck, or a canine's neck, or any other species of vertebrate's neck. You would think it would have more vertebrae instead of the exact same number.
100% what you said, correct. I'd also even go so far as to add, because the creationists will say, oh, that's God designed it that way. But if you also add the fact that if you look at what's created via evolution, it's actually not the most simplistic way of doing it. You think if God designed it, he would have designed a far more efficient, or in a lot of cases, simplistic way to do it. So if you take what you just said as in homologous features and the process, and then combine with the fact that a lot of cases, it's not even the best so-called design, the argument has got to point towards common ancestry versus the fact that God created it. Because either that or God created it imperfectly in the first place.
And my immediate question when a creationist or intelligent design type would make that argument would be, what's the mechanism? Because we know what the mechanism is for homologous features and homologous development stages. It's inheritance. It's genetic inheritance through sexual reproduction. And I don't see any sort of mechanism for design. It's just an a posteriori ad hoc explanation. Pun intended on the a posteriori thing. It's coming out of the posterior.
Yep. No, I got that. I know Mike loved it. He enjoys it. He's an ass expert, obviously.
Anyway, what the hell was I going to say? There's something I forgot it. So Captive Desk posted a short. Is that yours?
Yeah, you sure did.
Starts out with the Bible and science or whatever. So you got to go to Captive Desk to watch that one because it's pretty short. So anyway, this is where the butthole is forming right here. Like this shows the butthole forming, and then it eventually this tube goes out to the surface and creates the mouth. So basically, butthole first. And another little illustration I have for y'all.
Where's the ass? Is that in between the blue?
The what?
Where's the asshole? Is that the one in between the blue?
Yeah. Down here, basically, right there. It's just forming your gut, basically, and it goes all the way through the organism.
So at some point, the top becomes your mouth, like a hole appears, it becomes a mouth, right?
Yep.
All right, makes sense.
Yeah.
If you watch like a time lapse of micro photography, it literally looks almost kind of like a little orb, like an orange or an apple or something, and it develops a furrow, it develops a crease, and that crease gradually deepens until it becomes an opening on the other end. It's really cool to watch.
Is that why the ass emoji is a peach?
It works. I get it. Yeah, it makes sense. I look at it and I'm like, yep, that's a butt.
You've obviously done microembryology. Yep, well done.
Yep, definitely.
It does look kind of similar.
Yeah,
it really does.
I didn't realize we had video. I mean, it makes sense that we do. I didn't realize that. I'll have to Google it, see videos of this happening.
Yeah, it's super cool.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
So I'm getting a different short. What the hell am I getting here, Dave?
I can see it, Mikey.
Huh?
I can see it. It's called the Bible, Big Bang, and Evolution, right?
Yeah, I got an alert about it, but I haven't watched it yet.
And science are not enemies.
This one.
The Bible is not trying to do science. It's talking about.
Well, that's the one.
I think so. It's the very first one on my YouTube.
Yeah.
So, watch out, Nerdy Rodent. He says he's now searching butthole videos on YouTube. That's going to really mess with your algorithm.
Oh no! Don't search for
butthole. Very
butthole.
careful about how you phrase that. Look for embryological time lapse.
Yes, buttholes
instead of butthole video.
Oh shit. So what else we got going on?
Well, I mean, if we're signaling kind of the end of the stream here, I would say that I just want to return to the central thesis of my video on this, the title of my stream on this, which is that Subboor is a creationist who sucks. He's a racist guy. He's really, really arrogant and really ignorant. I'm doing this class on how to do public speaking, and my teacher told me I have a really good speaking voice. So allow me to slip into a little announcer voice here for a moment. Are you a Muslim who hates science? Are you frustrated that scientists investigate the universe and find things that contradict your Bronze Age mythology that was never meant to be taken literally anyways? Well, do I have a creationist for you? Subboor Ahmad. He's racist. He's dumb. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Yet, he has the arrogance of the world's leading expert. He's a philosophy student who thinks he knows biology better than actual biologists. However, if you are a thinking person who actually wants to learn something about a subject that genuinely provides use to humanity, that produces robust endeavors that help things like medicine and academia and public health and safety and conservation and agriculture, consider maybe subscribing to myself, Austin Sims, the creationism super thesis guy, or Mike, Speed of Sound, Answers in Atheism. Like this video, comment on it, come to our channels and interact with us. Go out to the street corner on your local public square and scream, subscribe to Answers in Atheism and Creationism super thesis guy on YouTube.
Did you just make up the script on the spot? That's actually it's pretty good. But you know what? And I do have to say this, whilst that sounded good, Captive Desk, he would have made it sound beautiful.
Oh my God. I will never have as good of a voice as Dave, but my teacher told me I've got a really nice speaking voice, and I wish very compliment you back.
Yeah. My mom told me never to talk in public.
Oh no.
She said, shut the fuck up.
Mom. Oh God.
Shut up.
Oh no.
Well, I didn't start talking till I was like 3 years old. Then she said I wouldn't shut up. It's like, Mom, I was preparing my thesis. So before I spit it out there. But she said she really regretted teaching me to talk. So Scott, what the hell are you doing, Scott? What are you doing back there? Pretty quiet.
Sitting here trying to stay awake.
Oh, Yes, I do that.
Not
all
because
the
of the
time.
content, just because I had a little 3-year-old wear me out this morning.
Yeah. So I'm going to say something sacrilegious that I have been thinking about. I'm going to try not drinking coffee tomorrow morning when I wake up. And I know that's a horrible thing to say out loud. I'm going to get, I'll probably get banned
Not
on
horrible to
YouTube
me,
for
Mike.
saying.
I don't like coffee, so that's
No.
fine with me.
I'm going to try some green tea or some other goddamn kind of fucking tea thing. And because I think coffee, I get up at 3 a.m., start studying and drink. Well, I put like a full cup of coffee beans in 1 cup of coffee. So basically that's pretty strong. And then I drink it. And then after about 4 hours, I just fits out and I'm tired all goddamn day. So tomorrow I'm going to try doing something different. Now, it's either my coffee is screwing me up or I have a brain tumor, and I'm kind of siding with the brain tumor. But
You satanic demon.
I'm
You
tired. Yeah, it's a
evil,
satanic
evil monster.
demon. Yeah.
How could you betray us like this?
Well, do you know how to tell if it's working? If my theory is correct and it's coffee that's screwing me up. So at 4 p.m. when we get ready to go live, if I don't say, what the fuck am I doing this for? Then it's working. Like I always set up a stream and then I'm like, oh God, what the hell am I doing? I can't do this. I just can't. Anyway.
Well, I think what we're doing does have some value. I mean, I wouldn't be here participating if I didn't believe that.
Yeah.
I think we're building a culture. We're contributing to that. And I think on our most delusional, cringe, optimistic days, we're doing what we can to rehabilitate public scientific literacy. And I think both of those things have a lot of value.
Someday in the future, our videos will be displayed everywhere, like in 2230 or something. They'll be like, God, these guys were geniuses. They'll be all over us, man.
Well, you know what? That would be great. But I'm happy if even just like one person watches them and learns something they didn't know. Oh, man. I can't believe I haven't mentioned this on a stream yet. I had a person contact me and say that I actually convinced them that they should not be a young Earth creationist anymore.
No shit.
They now are considering themselves a theistic evolutionist. They have come around and they believe the Earth is old. They believe evolution is valid. And I thought this was super, super compelling, super fantastic news because he also homeschools his kids. And he said he's not going to teach them young Earth creationism anymore. And that was huge. That my heart exploded with happiness at hearing that.
Austin, Mikey, do you remember like back in the day when Dapper Dinosaur used to do that Leaving Young Earth Creationism series? And then he stopped it for the last, I think he stopped it for the last 3 years. And I think he did that continuing from that other guy, the one that did the hominid evolution debate with Ken Hogan. I forgot his name, but he was really good. Maybe that's something that you might want to kind of restart, like do an interview with a guy and kind of talk about how he left young Earth creationism.
Oh, yeah.
What convinced him? What was your argument, Austin, that kind of really kind of put the nail in the coffin? I think that would be quite interesting to hear.
Yeah, that would be good. Idea.
Yeah.
Hey, Ian.
I don't think I've ever convinced a young Earth creationist to stop being a Christian, but I have had a couple say, okay, I'm a theistic evolutionist now.
And I think that's fine.
Or I'm an old Earth creationist now, which, you know what? Moving the needle, as far as I'm concerned, I think it's a win.
Yeah.
Theistic evolution, basically, there's a whole new way to look at the Adam and Eve story in the Bible and all of that.
Yeah. That's
a lot more interesting. And I don't have too much of a problem with those guys, as long as they're not science deniers or, dumbass supporters.
Precisely that.
Yeah. Anyway, that leads me to my question, Ian. How do you like them tariffs, Australia?
Yeah, on the penguins? They tariffed an island, I think. Norfolk Island. We have an island in Australia, Norfolk Island, It's got about 2,000 people in it. It doesn't export anything. It's a very popular tourist destination for Aussies. Like it's got beaches and stuff. And that copped wasn't even a 10% tariff. It copped a 39% tariff. So no one in Australia could understand why that island, which is part of Australia, got tariff 39%, and it doesn't export anything. It's just like there's a couple of resorts there. People go there.
But they've been mistreating us for ages. They've been mistreating America. America is suffering so badly. I mean, the other day my lawnmower wouldn't start, and I was like, "Oh God,
damn,
make America great again."
Hey, I gotta ask you, how are you guys going though? Like, after like China's gone and whacked on like massive tariffs on you guys, and I think after today, maybe Trump will whack 50% off, and China's gonna go fuck you and just do another 50%. Like, I looked at some of the world's data based on all this tariff stuff. China doesn't know, like in the last 10 years, from the first time that Trump imposed the first tariff, China's massively diversified itself away from America, so that what America
that's what's going to happen.
So that what America can do to it is much more minimal than it could 10 years ago. And yet America does import a lot of Chinese stuff, so they're going to hurt the most. Like, are you guys seeing prices rise yet? Are you guys going to, and I mean you guys, I mean the Republicans, are you guys, the grassroots movements, Republicans, going to start complaining and start kind of letting Trump know that what he's doing is wrong? Like, you guys seeing grocery prices, anything kind of going up?
I'm sure there will be complaining about it, but I doubt that the blame will be appropriately placed.
Right.
They'll complain about it, but they'll somehow still blame the Democrats for it.
Canada's going to diversify anyway. Even if we come back, to a Democratic administration and wipe these tariffs off, the rest of the world is going to remember this. This scar is going to be there. But Ian, for you being on my channel, I have to pay $1 a minute tariff for you to be here.
Oh, really?
So,
I reciprocated, mate. I reciprocated. It's $1 back too.
Because it's like, you're like an import. I'm importing you right now, so.
I haven't listened to your words. Every time you say a word, I've got to pay $1 for that word. Those are very expensive words.
Oh, really? Okay.
You should listen to your mom. Okay, you should listen to your mom.
Shut the fuck up.
Otherwise, it's going to cost me.
Yeah. Yep. Anyway, well, I guess we can get out of here, guys. We've done our damage. I think we I don't know. I would like the science of all that stuff, like genetic assimilation and all that stuff. It'd be nice if I could put together something coherent, but I hope I explained it in a way that makes sense to anybody. And I hope somebody learned something a little bit from it, because anyway, it's kind of what I want to do.
We covered the most important thing about it, which is that it doesn't contest evolution at all. No. I don't know why Subboor even brought it up.
It tells you how evolution works. It just tells you more about all it. And that's what creationists do all the time, is they point out the things that are basically, that's how it works. It's just like,
I have to see that debate now. It's on my list of things to watch, but it sounds like it's quite a good debate.
If you look at my description, Ian, I've got 3 links to that debate. Watch it on James Fodor's channel, because he's the one that ran the debate. And I have links to a bunch of books and papers.
Tell me, how badly was he smashed? Like, how badly was he smashed?
I think it was pretty bad, primarily because he conceded the debate at about 45 minutes in. He says, nobody rejects Darwinian evolution, in a debate titled "Is Darwinian Evolution a Fact?" It was. But do me a favor, Ian, when you do get around to watching it, go look at the comment sections on the 3 different channels that have posted a video of it. Look at the comment section on, Professor Dave's video of it. Look at the comment section on James Fodor's video of it, and look at the comment section on Subboor's video of it, and just compare and contrast those.
But it will be whatever the audience is. So, the creationist audience will be dumb. So it will be you one and something stupid. Dave will be a little bit more like obviously towards evolution, but a little bit smarter comments. I don't know, who's James. Like, is he like a?
He moderated it. He was the moderator.
James Fodor.
He's debated Subboor himself before.
James Fodor is really worth. His channel is really worth it. He's got a lot of interesting stuff.
Philosopher. Yeah. I'm pretty sure he's an Aussie too. He's studying at
Oh,
the
he-
University of
Well,
Melbourne.
then, look,
Oh,
then,
is he?
then you'll
I
be
was
great.
about to ask if you knew him.
Yeah, yeah. There's only 10 of us around here. There's not a lot of people in Australia.
Yeah.
So those terrorists are going to hurt us.
Yep. I imagine Australia is just a den of fucking snakes and spiders and crocodiles and alligators.
You forgot the
and
kangaroos.
then Ian in the middle, swimming away,
apparently,
paddling
Steve
away.
Irwin. Do you know Steve Irwin? That
Of
the crocodile
course.
hunter? Yeah, apparently
Yeah, I
his
do.
son's now an underwear model.
He what?
No, seriously. I read it the other day. His son is now an underwear model.
That doesn't surprise me much. He's a pretty attractive young fellow. He's
But
in good
his
shape.
son was following in his footsteps for a while.
Yeah,
son and daughter.
Both the son and daughter were Australia Zoos in Sydney, so they both work in Australia Zoo. But the last time I've seen pictures of them would have been like 10 years ago, so I have no idea what. I can't say I actually looked on the internet and look how attractive he is, Austin, but I'm sure he's a good-looking guy.
You know what? I bet those underwear modeling jobs gave him a lot of money, and I bet a lot of that money got poured right back into conservation, just like his dad's philosophy was.
And do you know what's great about underwear models?
He was just using them to smuggle the budgies overseas, mate.
Underwear models very seldom get killed by stingrays or whatever they are.
That's true. Yeah.
And snakes. Yeah. It's a hell of a lot safer. If I had a choice, for my kid, I guess it would be underwear model. So anyway. Okay, guys, we're going to get out of here. So anyone?
All right, Austin and Ian, it was great to see you. Yeah, you too, Mike.
It's good to see you guys. Love to join when I can. It's always fun.
Okay. Goodbye, cruel world. Going to end this thing.
Bye.